there's got to be kind of more. That's kind of vague. Like if we said, okay, we acknowledge these horrible past. We are dedicated to never letting that happen again. And our plan of action is going to be to lock up every young black man from ages 15 to 26 so he makes it into older age without ever having committed a crime. Obviously, that would be bad. So there's a certain direction of action that I'm sure you have in mind.
Okay. You really like these extreme examples to try to prove.
Well, right. I just want to. Yeah, okay, I do. I just really.
It's okay. It's fine. I know. I get the points that you're trying to make, so I'm just gonna go with it. But like,
Sure.
but yeah, like, in terms of specifically what we can do is, first of all, we have to teach a history of race, which we never have in this country. And so that is
So
how. So what?
how? Because I mean, we do teach some race. Like, what is it? What would you do different than we do now?
I think that what we do now, we definitely don't teach a history of race. We mention race, for sure, but we don't teach about race. People learn about race, because we talk about other things. Like if we talk about slavery, then we may mention that white people were typically the masters and that black people were typically the slaves, and it was a race based slavery system, chattel slavery system. That might be mentioned. That's not really what I mean. I, race has a history just like everything else. The racial categories under which we exist, black, white, Asian, Latino, Hispanic, if you will,
Sure.
Native American, etc. These categories and their creation and how they came into existence and what they ended up meaning and how they ended up being used in systems of power, it all has a history. And we do not teach people what that is. That's what I mean.
And what would change for the better if we taught that?
I think that what would change for the better if we taught that is that what's happening right now, which is that a lot of people are confused about what's happening presently because they never learned about this past. I think that cognitive dissonance would be resolved. And then a lot of the conflicts that we have about what we should do moving forward about these issues would not exist. It only exists because a lot of people have no idea why this stuff is happening in the first place, and they think they do. And an answer has been supplied to them.
You mean stuff currently?
Right. Mm-hmm. An
Right.
answer has been supplied, and
Can I ask what you mean specifically? Or
I mean like DEI, critical
thing.
race theory, SEL, the stuff we're talking about. These implementations, most people are looking at them in some kind of a vacuum and not connecting them to a legacy of racial history in the country, but they're directly connected to that. And I see it a lot in my conversations with people about this subject where I'm talking about affirmative action, which was, recently done away with by the Supreme Court in higher education admissions, or whether we're talking about Voting Rights Act, which has also been uh, whittled away to almost nothing now. So, like, I think that a lot of people don't really understand why these laws came into being, how effective they were or not, um, whether people fought against them or not, or whether they were just accepted. There's a lot of assumptions that people make on those lines in their thinking without actually ever learning about it, so that then they can make arguments presently about what's going on that is based on an imagined history or a history that they haven't really thought about, and don't take into account how the past is informing the present. I think that's the vast majority of people who are doing thought on this subject matter, like what we should be doing in schools or how we should deal with anti-racism in our society. So one thing that I try to do is bring some of these lessons of the history of race into people's consciousness, right? So that then they can then wrestle with the cognitive dissonance that's inevitable when they learn about it. Because if you know the true history, then what's going on with social emotional learning, what's going on with CRT, these things are no longer privilege walks. These things are not a mystery and they make perfect sense. And oftentimes people realize that it's the bare minimum actually, and that we should be doing a lot more.
I mean, you're familiar with the I guess are you familiar with like the origins of social emotional learning and like what its stated intended effects and goals and
I
stuff
mean, I
are?
just Googled it right now, like just to have something on hand to say it to you. It says here, the first thing that comes up when I type in goals of, oops, oops, goals of SEL in education is what I Googled. It says to account for differences and help put all students on an equal footing to succeed. That's how they start. Social and emotional learning aims to help students better understand their thoughts and emotions, to become more self aware, and to develop more empathy for others within their community and the world around them. So, pretty much what we were talking about. Another one here says, what are the goals of SEL students learning? Demonstrates a range of communication and social skills to interact effectively, cultivates constructive relationships with others, identifies and demonstrates approaches to addressing interpersonal conflict.
I mean, that's a very brief like PR page, but
I'm just
okay.
asking.
I mean,
Okay, all right.
well, right. I'm just saying what it is and why you're never going to get people who really are aware of it on board with it. Number one, it's practicing therapy or psychology without a license. What you're trying to do is you're trying to
That's not
basically
really right, Rocco. I'm sorry. I have to stop you there, okay, brother? So we
it
have
is.
we
I'm not saying based
hang on. Let
on
me
that
explain.
paragraph. I'm saying when you really dive into what some of the practices are, it absolutely is. What
No,
the
brother.
goal is
I can explain,
to,
okay? I can explain, all right?
it
Because
really is. Well, go ahead. I don't want to cut
yeah,
you
no,
off.
I
It's your
can
show.
explain because this is my wheelhouse, bro. Right? Like, I mean,
But dude, you're not very familiar with it. You just had to Google it. It's not your wheelhouse.
listen,
Social
I
emotional
googled it,
learning.
so I'm going off of a source that's not just me, so I could
Well,
show
right. If it
you
was your
that this is
wheelhouse, you'd have a million things to say about it. You had to Google it to tell me what it was.
no, brother. That's not what happened.
It's
Okay.
cool, man. It doesn't have to be your wheelhouse. It's not my wheelhouse either. I have probably read more about it than you. It's fine. I don't really believe in expertise anyway.
Right. So
The
it's interesting that you're spending all this time on it.
issue, what
So
it
like,
is it's to break kids down emotionally and try and get them to see the world the way a leftist sees the world. It's what it is. It's literally using emotion and manipulation on the very, very young, like creepy, weird evangelical churches do, only more scientific about it, if you will, to get kids to have sympathies and a worldview just like a very far extreme leftist, like Paulo Freire was, for example. It's not good. It's not okay. It is actually a plot to turn kids into communists, and people are just not going to be okay with it. And you can say that no, it's not, and then we can show you the book, and you can see that it
I mean,
actually is.
I'm just like, is having sympathy for someone a bad thing?
Dude, it's not just sympathy
I mean,
anymore
that's
than
all you said.
privilege
You
walks
literally
or
said
just
it will cause
empathy.
people to have sympathy for others, and that's
No,
terrible.
it's
That's
not
literally
about
what you just said.
sympathy. It's
That's the
about
only thing you
thinking
just said, man.
everyone could be. No, it's not even that. It's a belief. It's if you really want to get into it, it's a really creepy old mystical belief that all was one and was tragically separated, and eventually we're all going to be one again. It started, long before it got picked up by Karl Marx. It's been kicked around, and now it's what we today refer to as woke. But that is what it is. It's based in and what it comes from. And what it does is it tries to, get into kids' heads emotionally. Well, did you know this? Did you know that you have it better than other kids because both your parents are at home and you went to college and you're white? Well, if we all did the right thing, we could make it to where it's fair for everybody. But the big bad people don't want that to ever happen. You're not going to be like that, are you? When you get older, you're going to change the world and make sure it's fair for everybody. That is trying to start a neo-communist revolution. And unless you see the world like that, which only, mind you, a tiny, 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 tiny share of our population does, then why would you possibly want that to happen?
So you don't want. So you don't want.
You agreed with me.
Hang on.
That's what this is about.
Can I ask? So you don't want people to grow up
I don't want people to
promoting
grow
a
up
world
thinking that we all need to work
fairness.
together to make sure everyone starts and finishes in the exact same place. No,
Okay,
I'm
well,
not a freaking communist.
no one is suggesting that at all. Like, so, what you
Okay.
just said from your own words is like you said we're going to teach people, um, that people don't have the same.
We're going to teach people that the world is tragically unfair, and it's our fault that it's unfair, because if we did the right
Okay,
things, we
so
would
that
make
part,
it
it's
fair,
our
and then
fault that
all
it's
of our
our fault
problems
that
would
it's
go away.
unfair. It's our fault that it's unfair is never.
Yes.
That is never part of any
It's
conversation I've
implied
ever
when you
seen.
say the world is unfair and there's things
So
that
it's implied,
we
meaning
could
no
do
one's saying
that
that.
make it unfair, but we just don't. That means that it's our fault the world is unfair.
Okay, listen, bro. Like you're doing so much work there for people without them doing it. You know, like I mean, nobody is saying that. Like you even had to say it's
No,
implied
we're just
because
saying,
it's
look at where
literally.
Joey starts out compared to Jimmy. Isn't the world unfair? Look at all
Listen,
these ways the world is unfair. It's our
if
job to work
Joey's cool with
together
the way the
to make
world
sure the
is,
world's not unfair, so we can all start in the same place.
bro. Listen, nobody's saying that. That's what I'm saying. It's like you're just making that up.
Everyone is saying that. That is the stated goal of these policies.
No.
The Vice President of the United States loves to go out and say, it's about making sure that everyone starts where everyone can finish in the same place, because people start in different places. Everyone is saying it, and it is what's happening.
I mean, you're just misstating it.
And honestly, any conversations about the matter that aren't about exactly this are just noise. Because what people are arguing about is, do we want to emotionally manipulate young kids into being leftists before the regular world can imprint on them and keeping them from being leftist? And the answer from almost anyone who realizes that's what's going on is absolutely freaking not. I mean, the worldviews behind all of these programs can't even win elections in places like Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco anymore. It's a failed, obviously ridiculous worldview, and that it's informing the education of K through 12 children is insane, and that somehow the conversation ends up being about Nazis it's a travesty when the actual people, our kids, who are failing, and our schools are, haven't performed worse in a really, really long time. They're the ones that are actually hurt. They're the ones that, because they're taught to see the world like this, they're neurotic freaks a lot of the time, because that's kind of what leftism is. And suicide is up, and depression is up, and birth rates are down, and all of this is bad. And, I think that trying to cut off one of the pipelines by not doing that to young children is definitely worthwhile.
Well, I mean, it makes total sense if what you were saying was correct, but it's not. So,
it is. So I'm glad that our only disagreement is whether or not that's the case. And it's all very much there. If anyone watching wants to go read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, wants to read
Pedagogy of the Oppressed does not say what you just said.
On education and critical pedagogy, and then compare it to what's actually going on in the classroom. If you want to go and read around and dig around and see what's really behind social emotional learning, what its stated goals are, what activities are actually put into place because of it, don't take it from me. Look it up. Then we'll see who's right. And, if I'm right about that, then obviously my whole theory is correct, as you just said.
So let's go look it up right now. We're right here. We have computers.
We're not going to go and Google through stuff.
Why not, brother? I think that's the only way that we can move forward with the conversation. And we can. It's easy, right? It's with the click of a button. So what's the first thing that we should look up that you would recommend people look up in order to figure this out? We're not going to read a whole book.
Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
We're not going to read the whole thing.
It's the most cited guy in the history of education, and that's where all this came from, and that's where all these stated goals came from. I'd say, yeah, that's probably where you should start.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.